It is January 22nd, 2019, and we're here with Mom and Dad at the farm. And officially, Mom, what's this place called?
This is called Packard Oaks. And the reason why we called it that is because we have tons of oak trees right here in the front of our house and behind our house and everywhere. And so we chose, since we're Packards, we wanted to have it as Packard Oaks.
And it started out at 350 acres, and it's a cattle ranch, and it's leased out. All the pastures and fences, Steve, are leased out to the neighbor across the street, Kyle Payne.
Okay.
And he runs 800, 900 head of cows, but he also has his farm that belonged to his dad, and he rents two others to run that many cows. So we have.
And he does all of the whatever needs to be done to fences or the ponds or
corrals,
the roads and stuff like that. So
the gates,
he maintains those for us.
So
but then
that's part of his lease. That's part of
Yes.
his lease.
yeah, and he pays about $4,000 a year is all, so it isn't very much for.
Okay.
And we sold off 86 acres to the water district for the Northern Texas Water District
Authority.
It's going to be a big lake going in on the southern part of our property, and it'll be all underwater.
Here in the next
it'll
year
be
or two or three or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it'll end up. We'll have probably a mile of lake frontage because of the two deep ditches that will all be filled, and a little bit on each side of each ditch will be covered with water and be a part of the lake.
Now, will you have a little island out there as well that's yours, or no? Once the lake gets there, didn't we talk about that?
No, it won't be an island, but it'll be an area that is excluded.
Deep. It's a big, deep ditch.
Yeah, and
that's
so
out
there's
there.
an area there that'll be hard to get to from here, and we'll have to paddle across to get to that last 10 acres back there.
Okay.
I wanted to talk, though, about our mission to Japan a little bit more than we have in the past. We served in the office, as we've mentioned before, and after a while they knew that we had a large family. In fact, 10 children, and they were all married and on their own, and so it's ended up with 54 grandchildren, and a lot of them are in this picture. So we gave a fireside in our ward, and it went over so well that the mission president and zone
President
leaders,
Yokoyama
yeah,
and Sister Yokoyama.
they
our
really
mission
wanted
president.
us to do it in other branches and wards. So we ended up traveling all over the mission, and this explains the fireside.
It's all in Japanese.
And the subject of the fireside is how we raised 10 children and how we took care of them. And we had Talmadge and I would be at the pulpit
Together.
And we each would take a section, and then she would take a section, and then I would take a section, back and forth. We had an interpreter. Our very best interpreter was Elder Morita, Yasu Morita, because he went to Snow College from Japan. He's from Tokyo area, and he learned English many years before and was an excellent interpreter. And he also was the assistant to the president, and he would many times be our interpreter if he could.
He joined the church as he was at Snow College.
Yeah.
He joined the church
Oh, wow.
at that time.
He became a great missionary, and in fact, at the last of his mission, his mom and dad came to the mission field to see how things work, and
Because they were not members.
No, they were not.
anyway, we ended up. He didn't have a companion, so he brought me with him, and we taught them and baptized them the day that he left from his mission. his mother and father. So he was very, very successful, a great teacher.
But when we would do these firesides, there was usually always a notice in the paper that this was happening, and plus there were posters outside even at the entryway of the church and stuff that the local people could see it as they walked by the church. And so it was really pretty well advertised that
Big posters,
this
much, much bigger than this.
American family would be, or a couple would be coming to teach about how to raise children. So anyway, and there were the photographers and stuff from the paper would come out and
interview us, and they would attend. We'd have 10, 15 non-members or more with all the ward members there too, and so it was a great experience. We were just heading out to do the last two when we were finishing up our mission.
Now, where did you serve in Japan? Where were you in Japan?
It's in Sapporo, Japan, is the capital of that particular prefecture.
Okay.
And it included the entire island of Hokkaido, the Hokkaido Island, which is way, way north, very, very cold.
Just south of China and Russia.
Yes,
Yeah, Sakhalin Island is just north of the Russian.
In fact, the 1972 Olympics,
Right, were
Winter
held there.
Olympics,
Yeah.
It
were
was
held
held
there.
right there, yeah.
And in fact, to this day, there are still the big slopes and the big
Jumps.
the jumps and the where they have to climb up,
Right,
and
right.
And then you hear the bell and down they come, but those are all still there up in the woods, up in the mountains.
And I had this new little camera, and that camera takes DVDs, small ones like this one, and we have probably 25, 30 of these for each mission, the mission in Japan and the mission in Georgia. And the reason I pulled this one out is to just make sure that these last two, I knew the name of the city and the ward that I was attending. These are wards, and it was
Mururan.
no, that's the last one. This is Hakodate
Okay.
is the main one we were going to, and the mission had just bought a new van, and President Yokoyama wanted to drive instead of having one of his assistants drive.
Uh-huh.
He was at the wheel, and his wife was on the passenger side, and both the assistants were in the middle, and Talmadge and I were in the back seat of it on this big mission van. And it was snowing. It was in the winter, and the snow was on the road, and half slushy and half snow, and it was a freeway, 2 lanes on each side of this wire cable
barrier.
Yeah, cable fence between the 2 traffic lanes, the 2 on the opposite side and 2 on our side.
And brother or President Yokoyama was the driver, and he usually never ever drove. He would either let the assistants drive or his oldest daughter that was there on a mission with them. She would always drive, especially up in the mountains. And if it was a long trip, she usually would drive. But he decided that he wanted to drive. It was a brand new van, and plus he was wearing big, heavy boots that he very seldom ever wore as far as when he was doing, church business. He would wear regular shoes, but these were big, heavy boots.
Because it was all, like you say, it's snowing and slushy and mucky or whatever it was.
Yes, and it was appropriate to have them.
Sure.
But it's just that he was not used to wearing them and to drive.
Got it.
We were about halfway there, so I'd say we'd been on the road about an hour. It's about a 3-hour drive from, and pretty soon his wife says, "Hey, you're getting too close to this truck." And there's a great big truck on this lane, and he was passing it, and so he overcorrected and went too far, and then he was getting close to that fence, and I think scraped it just a little bit, and then swerved it back and he hit the truck. And the truck knew he was hit and pulled over and stopped, and we pulled to skidded to a halt like this with the front end of the van into the snow. Whenever they snowplows work, they leave a big lot of snow on the side of the road, and so the front of the van was into it, and the truck was right into it on the side to allow the traffic to go by. But there was very little room for the traffic to go by once our van was in. It took up nearly both lanes, and anyway, the cars. We thought that the van was on fire because of the safety thing blew.
Just the
Airbag.
buzzer.
The
airbag.
airbag.
Yeah, the airbags blew, and it put smoke inside the van.
Well, and plus
it's a powder.
before that, when it blew, it came right on to Sister Yokoyama.
Yeah, on the passenger
and
side.
she was moaning and because she was hurt. She really was
they hit
hurt.
hard. They hit hard.
They
hit
hit
her hard.
hard. Well, anyway, so finally, we.
Well, I says, hey, the van is on fire. We got to get out. And so we all got out. The two assistants went over to talk to the truck driver. President Yokoyama and Sister Yokoyama were just barely over next to the front of the truck and barely away from the van. Talmadge and I were right out the door
we came
here.
out. We came
And
out.
we were in the back of the back part of the van,
Long-
not against the bumper, but almost. And
No, on the side, honey, of the wheel.
Yeah.
where the wheel was. Anyway, the traffic had already stopped on the center lane next to the fence. And then all of a sudden, coming right at us while we were standing there, was this white car. We found out later he thought he could get through somehow, and he did not slow down.
He was coming still along
on the
or coming the opposite way.
on the end. No, coming
Same
along
way.
with us, the
Okay.
same
Okay.
direction. And we were standing there, and we knew we were going to get hit. 'Cause,
I said to him, we're going to get killed.
yeah, I remember her
mean-
saying that. We're going to get killed. And just seconds later, that van, he had locked his wheels. The front wheels were
Yeah.
skidding.
the
piling
white,
of
the white
snow.
car.
The white car was piling up snow in front of his wheels, sliding right into us, direct into us. And then all of a sudden, his car wheeled to an angle and hit our van.
Well, no, it didn't hit the van.
Yeah, that's how it blew the windows. That's why we had glass.
Go ahead.
Anyway, to this day, Chad, I want to see the video. When I get to the other side, I want to see the video of how that happened, because I am convinced that there were angels that literally stopped that van from coming directly at us. There was no way that it could stop because of the momentum. And it just all of a sudden turned for no reason. It turned this way, and the front of it hit and broke his glass, and then hit the front of our van. So the van got hit twice up there, and then it plowed into the snowbank. And we found out that they thought they had killed the Packards, and they couldn't get out of the van. They just didn't want to face the issue. And it was the assistants that went over and convinced them that we were okay. Anyway, Chad, we were on our way to Hakodate, which is another 2 hours to get there, to give this fireside about how to raise 10 children in America. And because we were scheduled, that was on a Saturday. And the president was going down for interviews with the six missionaries that were down there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the president asked us, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, we got to get down there. So Sister Yokoyama, she felt like she was hurt. and she wanted to go to the hospital and see, because it was still, she was hurting, moaning. And so the ambulance finally came, and we got in the back of the ambulance with our luggage and our materials
Right.
that we had for our fireside, and the projectors and everything that we had. It's a what do you call it? With
PowerPoint.
a PowerPoint projection. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, we left, and we said we'll find one of the missionaries to do the interpreting for us, and so we got in
Well, we went to the hospital. We took her to the
Yeah.
hospital.
well,
and
that,
stayed
that
there
was
with her.
they had to go back
Oh.
about 20 minutes back to the hospital, not on our way.
I see.
And also, that's where you could catch the train. It only stops at certain
Sure.
places. So we go back there, and Sister Yokoyama was okay. And that's when we started finding the glass in our clothes. We were so. I figured that we were within an inch of getting hit with that car, and President and Sister Yokoyama was most likely an inch to an inch and a half, because they went right between that, and as it hit the front of our van, they were right there close by. Just squeezed that thing just squeezed in between four people that they could have killed. Anyway, when we got on the train, we got the last two tickets to get to the train to go on to Hakodate. And as we watched the train go by, there on car number 2 was Ben Kikuchi. Ben Kikuchi was the 70s. He was an area authority 70 and a good friend of ours, and we'd been to dinner with him a lot of times. And great man. In fact, for this day, he was just made the president of the temple, the brand new temple in Sapporo, Japan.
Oh, yeah.
And he's the first president. And we were there at the open house and congratulated him and things just a year ago. Anyway, there he was heading for Hakodate on the train. And so when we got seated, I wanted to go talk to him and tell him. So I went up and told him about the accident. And he could speak English pretty good. And I told him, I says, hey, in the hereafter, I want to see how the Lord pulled that one off for Elder and Sister Packard, because I know that we were preserved for a reason. And so we knew that we still had things to do in this life because of that accident. We went on to Hakodate, and he wanted to be the interpreter for our fireside. And that's the only one that he ever got to interpret, and he was very, very impressed with, because we brought in the church an awful lot, and seminary, and family prayer, and so many things, family home evening.
Yeah.
We spent time on all of those subjects. We had about 10 subjects that we would go to back and forth, and it was all down pat by then, because we'd done it now. We're in the 20s. We did 24 of them, and the last two, number 23 was at Hakodate. Anyway, we gave the fireside on the Saturday, and went to bed. And in the meantime, President Yokoyama had called Ben Kikuchi, because he knew he was down there. He says, could you take care of the Packards for us? And that's why he volunteered to be the interpreter. And God, he was right on us. Everything there, he saw us to get it checked into the motel, and then the next morning at 6 o'clock, he was there in the morning.
Well, before you tell that, honey, we had gone to the
Yeah.
hotel, and as we were undressing, we had our clothes, and we had a big raincoat on. He had a suit coat on. He had a white shirt on, and as he's taking all of these things off, I saw blood here on the sleeve, and this sleeve had been inside of his coat and his raincoat, and yet here was blood here.
We never did figure that out.
And we couldn't figure out, well, where did that come from? And then he goes into his suit pants coat, and there's glass in there.
Even in the cuffs
In
of
the
my
cuffs
pants.
of his shoes was
And she had glass in her clothes and her dress. When we here we had given the fireside even.
didn't even know it.
Didn't know we had
it.
glass all over the place. And so we must have been within less than an inch of that glass when it broke out
Well,
of
I think
that
it was
car.
from the bag. What do you call it?
No,
Up in front, because it's
there's no glass there, Mom.
Yeah.
No, it had to be from their car.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next morning he was there. Ben Kikuchi was there.
he had made us a lunch, brought us a lunch.
Mm.
There was like a 7-Up, a 7-Eleven right there
Yeah.
by the hotel or in the street. So he brought us a lunch for that breakfast for that morning, and then we look up on the board.
We
and
went
all of the trains
that
had
morning.
been
We got
canceled.
breakfast and we went to the train. And he said, "Oh, look, they were all canceled. All of the trains were
It was
canceled."
in Japanese, and we couldn't
We
read
couldn't
it.
read it. It's lucky he was there. The reason he said was because they had big snow drifts over the
tracks.
tracks,
the night,
and they just
during the
canceled
night.
everything. We had to be
The
the
last fireside.
not only the last fireside, but we were the sacrament meeting speakers for that ward that we were heading to, and so we checked the taxi cab. It was going to be $400.
$300, yeah.
It was a lot of money to
One.
take a taxi, and
Get there.
anyway, he says, "Let's check the bus depot." And we went to the bus depot, and there was a bus ready to schedule to go. And so he said, "Well, it'll only go halfway, but that's better than nothing. Let's go." So we got on the bus and
And
put our
it
legs
stopped every few seconds.
all the
it
way
seemed
through
like.
Hakodate. It would stop at nearly every corner, and we thought, well, there's no way we're going to make it in time to be the speakers. And so anyway, sure enough, we pulled into.
Mudaron.
No, Mudaron's the place we spoke. But anyway, it's on here. The little town was the end of the line where the bus
stopped.
goes in. And anyway, the bus came in and the snow was blowing horizontal, literally. And when we got out, we would,
Reminded you of no.
yeah,
Oh,
we
goodness.
would be walking, leaning forward into the blizzard because it was so snowy. We got about 10, 15 steps in front of the bus heading for the bus depot to get warm. And somebody yells out, "Are you the Packards?" and we said, "Yeah, we are." And it was the high councilman that lived in this town where we were heading,
Wow.
in Mudaron, that Elder Kikuchi had literally called a member of the high councilor, and he met us at the end of the line with his
Little truck.
little truck. Yeah,
Little
we got
Volkswagen
in there
truck.
with our luggage and all the stuff to do the fireside, and we headed out. And he took us to the ward, and we were taking off our coats when they finished up the sacrament, and we were the speakers.
The next
And
thing.
when we took our coats, he ushered us right up to the front, and we just barely would sit down, and we were at the pulpit, and we were the speakers. We never mentioned the accident. In fact, we didn't even tell the missionaries there in Hakodate or in Mudaron of the accident. We wanted the president to handle that. We didn't want to arouse we didn't want the discussion to get onto that
Not on
when we
yours.
were there to talk about how to raise children. Anyway, it was a great fireside, and one of the missionaries was the interpreter for us there. They had just 2 missionaries there, and the press. They are always there, and we were in the papers a lot of pictures. And anyway, we gave the fireside that afternoon, and it was interesting. The firesides got so successful and smooth, the interpreters made it that we. When we opened it up for questions, that took longer than the fireside
Sure.
because they had so many questions that they were asking about how to correct your children and things like that. It just, and when do you start? And so many questions. And it wasn't just from members asking the questions, non-members were asking. And so we had a few baptisms from all of these firesides with a lot of non-members. It was a big thing in the mission that we did. Anyway, that's not the end of the story. When we get out, the same high counselor, rushes us over to the bus because the trains still were not running. The bus depot. We took the last 2 seats on that bus. We were the last 2 seats on everything except the bus that took us to the end of the line. We took the whole. But we were on first, and nobody else got up because of the bad weather. Anyway, we got on that last on the train. It wasn't the.
It was the bus.
It was the bus. It was the bus, not the train. And we got on and came on in, and it was about 11:30, 12 o'clock midnight when we got back. And we looked back on that whole trip from the accident all the way around, and we knew that we had accomplished a lot. Now, I don't know who joined the church because of it, but I'll bet there are some that who heard the message, listened to the missionaries, and joined the church because we were spared on that trip, and we went in, and it was a great experience. And we now have all of these small DVDs on our external hard drive that we're making, Chad, and we're making one for every one of you kids. There's going to be 10 of them, and they will be on there, plus these movies that you're making. We're going to get them on there, and we'll have them in a month, maybe less, so that you'll have access to all of our mission, both here and in the country of Georgia.